Blockchain Show is a podcast that demystifies cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Blockchain Show. I'm here in West Hollywood with Bill Ottman and Daryl Davis. We're talking about Minds.com and a lot of other things. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So, introductions. I don't want this to seem like the first day of school where we're kind of going around. But Daryl, you have such a unique and interesting background. I was hoping you could just take a few minutes and just tell us who you are to the audience.
Well, my name is Daryl Davis. I'm an age 61, professional musician, actor, author, and lecturer. And I've spent my life traveling the world, seeing different ethnicities, religions, nationalities, colors, cultures, etc. First as a child of parents in the U.S. Foreign Service, and now as an adult professional musician. And at the end of the day, to date, I have been in 57 different countries on 6 continents. So I've literally experienced a multitude of those cultures and ethnicities. And all of that has helped shape who I've become. The one thing that I've learned in all my travels at the end of the day is we all are human beings. Unfortunately, in my own country, and it seems to be a growing trend globally, there are those who feel that not all of us are 100% human, or not all of us are worthy of being treated as human beings. And that has bothered me, and now I'm dividing my time up between playing music and trying to address the hate which comes in the form of supremacy and nationalism in my own country. And I speak in all the states. I speak globally. I've spoken in about 15 different countries so far, because there seems to be a trend over in Europe, in Israel, and also in India.
And Bill, welcome back.
Yeah.
Just in case anybody doesn't know you or Minds.com, would you mind just bringing us up to speed real quick?
Sure. Yeah, I'm the co-founder, CEO of Minds. We are a free and open source social networking platform that fights for internet freedom, free speech, civil discourse. We're really trying to propel dialogue with free speech in order to, help potentially de-radicalize people, but without infringing upon their rights at the same time. And as you know, we also leverage blockchain technology and sort of, understanding. I think maybe in this episode we could get a little bit into what we were talking about before, how permanency, the blockchain, the internet, what that has to do with speech and, the permanence of our record and things that we've said on the internet.
And if anybody hasn't already, I encourage you to go back, listen to the episodes we did with Bill and with Jack about the technology. Bill, I really like how you described blockchain on Ari Shaffir's podcast. I felt like it was a good overview. And we have a lot of listeners who are still learning about blockchain every day. Could you briefly describe blockchain, which I know is hard to do, and how Minds is using it just to further catch us up to speed?
Sure. So blockchain is, I don't exactly remember how I described it on Ari's podcast, but it's this decentralized ledger that everyone can run on their own machine, and it verifies transactions and basically it's like a triple ledger accounting system rather than traditional centralized banks where there's sort of an element of trust in understanding the transaction history. This blockchain is a trustless environment because it's transparent for everyone and everyone's running the code. So basically the way we use it on Minds, we use Ethereum, which is a general purpose blockchain where you can create what's called smart contracts. So you basically create a computer program where I can send some of the cryptocurrency to a contract, and then that contract, when it receives the cryptocurrency, is ordered to carry out another task. So it's like an automated contract. And on Minds, we have like 7 different smart contracts. So if you want to advertise your content, you can You can send crypto to our Boost product, and it boosts your post for more views, or you can send it peer-to-peer to another user as a tip. And we're working on actually being able to store the content itself on the blockchain so that it can never be deleted. Right now, when you boost to the blockchain, a reference to the post is posted to the blockchain. The blockchains are not good for storing heavy content, typically. Some are getting better at it, but really it's just proof that transactions have occurred.
Right on. Very well said. And how did you two meet? Because this is very interesting to me, how this came to be. And Daryl, what's your title at Minds?
I think I'm a board advisor.
Right on.
And I'm very proud to be one. And I think this is a fantastic platform initiative, that's been launched. And now we're trying to, make it worldwide and have more people come to know about it, because the internet especially needs to become de-radicalized. And I think a lot of it, has been a result of people getting frustrated on other platforms with the hate that's being circulated around, people not knowing how to deal with it. They either, get off the internet because it's too abusive, which it doesn't have to be. There are places you can go, where you can have civil discourse, even if people don't agree with your opinions. And we're providing that platform. I think over the years, for every action, there's an equal reaction. I think over the years, political correctness has done a lot of damage. People feel they have to walk on eggshells in order to talk to somebody. So either they don't talk to the person, or because they feel restricted by these eggshells, they explode on people. And they don't know how to be able to talk to somebody without being offensive or without being offended, using the right terminology to be politically correct. So some of them just say, you know what, I don't care, and the hate just flows. So I think with this platform now, there's a way that we can communicate our feelings and turn all cards face up on the table and understand one another. I think there's a fear of maybe hurting the other individual or being hurt, and not knowing how to communicate what you mean to say without somebody taking it and twisting it and misinterpreting it.
Yeah, I think that decentralization and de-radicalization might even work together, even though it's a little bit counterintuitive. So, on Facebook or Google, they have these strict sets of rules so that, if you're a comedian and you use some offensive word that's not politically correct, those networks they'll just ban you, because the algorithm says you've used this word, you will now be banned. You are now not allowed to participate in discourse. So by opening up the policy to being everything that's legal, and also allowing anyone to create their own platform, you're creating more of a social vent for communication. So the more people are able to communicate, generally speaking, the more de-radicalization that's likely to occur, because you're allowing people to get their perspective out there. They have a vent. There's probably people who are listening to them. So, you're not going to convince everyone to change. And, we don't have some agenda to, cause everyone on Minds to think the way that we think. That's, I don't think, the goal. The goal is definitely to, share information, educate people on why, obviously racism may even, be a mental illness, which I think many of us probably think. But that doesn't mean that we're enforcing our belief system on them. But we have a better chance at getting to them if we allow them to talk to us, as opposed to if we don't.
And I think, at the end of the day, really, most people, maybe not all, but most people, we all want the same thing. And, when that is understood between opposites, it brings them a little closer, and they can come to the conclusion, you know what, we can get that same thing a lot faster if we work together as opposed to working against each other. And it becomes more of a cooperative than a competitive. conversation. And Bill, you asked me how we met and things like that. I was invited as a panelist to a Minds event just recently, a few months back. And there was a variety of people with different thoughts at this thing. And just looking at it, you might think, well, how on earth can these people even be in the same room, or how can they communicate? But to me, it was 100% successful. And the people who lost were the people who didn't attend, who booed it. There were people from all different walks of life, all different thought patterns, Trump supporters, non-Trump supporters, this supporter, that supporter. And we all were in the same room together, all getting along for the common goal. And that's the thing. We spend way too much time in this country talking about the other person, or talking at the other person, or talking past the other person. What I prefer to do, and I believe what Minds prefers to do, is to spend a little bit of time talking with the other person. And that's how things are achieved. And if you saw this event, you would see something that would just totally flip your mind. And I've been seeing this kind of stuff for 30 years. I've been dealing with people who are the extreme opposite of me. As a black man, I sit down and talk to white supremacists. No, I don't support their ideology. No, I'm not kissing their behind. But I'm having conversations with them, finding out what it is about me or people like me that they dislike, that they fear, that they don't understand. And while you are actively learning about someone else, at the same time, you are passively teaching them about yourself. And that's how two people at the opposite end of the spectrum can come together. You find this common ground. You plant that seed. And as you nurture that seed, you're bringing two opposite forces together, and you're forging a relationship. And then you begin nurturing that relationship, and you get even closer, and you're forming a friendship. And now you found more things in common. Maybe not everything, but at least the trivial things that you have in contrast, such as skin color, or whether you go to a mosque, a temple, a synagogue, or a church, begin to matter less and less. And that's the goal.
I mean, think about the hypocrisy of the big networks that are banning the conversation in an attempt to cause less racism. But how would that work? You're doing exactly what the separatists. You are being a separatist by banning the conversation. So that is the exact same tool that racists and extremists and terrorists even use. So the tactic has to align with the goal.
And ironically, you say, like, for example, we go to Vietnam, we go to Iraq, we go to Afghanistan, all different races of Americans. Well, there's only one race, so I'm just using that generically, right? We go there to defend our country. Together over there, fighting these battles, these wars, we are nationalists. We all are nationalists. Okay, we are defending our country, our democracy, our Constitution. We are defending America, patriots, nationalists. But then, when we return, we become white nationalists. What's the difference? Why are we fighting together overseas, only to come back and be divided? If you think back to the 1960s, when Muhammad Ali was being drafted, he was the world champion. He did not want to go and kill people, and they said they were going to take away his belt. He said, "I already won." Here's the belt. He said, "Why should I go and kill Viet Cong only to come back to my home and be called a nigger?" And he was right. So he's going to go defend his country side by side, have everybody's back, everybody has his back, and he comes home and he's treated like a second-class citizen. So, we want to find out what it is where we can live together, we can fight together, we can stand together overseas. How can we stand together in our own country? Dialogue is the key. Respectful civil discourse. And Minds.com is the platform that will bring that about. You know, people tend to criticize unconventional things because until they become convention. And the example that I've given before is the astronomer Copernicus, who said that the Earth revolves around the sun, when everybody else believed that the Earth was the center of the universe and the sun revolved around the sun revolved around the Earth. They called him a heretic and put him in prison for saying that. They told Columbus the Earth was flat. So, you know, when you are in the minority and you're trying something unconventional, you have to jump through those hoops, circumvent those obstacles, and, you know, forge your way. And then it becomes convention. Like I was saying, I've been doing this for 30 years. And that's...
Is that here?
It's a live recording, everyone. We're in Hollywood.
I think it's somebody's car down on the street.
There's a car, yeah.
I've been doing this for 30 years. And what's interesting, which is one of the reasons why, you know, Minds.com, I think, sought me out. I have experience. I'm not just somebody who just started up the other day because of Charlottesville or something like that. 30 years ago, when people found, you know, even some of my friends found out, you know, that I was sitting down with white supremacists, all of a sudden I became a persona non grata. You know, people shunned me, thought I was crazy. Daryl's gone off the deep end, et cetera, et cetera. Now, 30 years later, those same people are calling me and say, "Hey, Daryl, what's going on? What's going on with those people? You know them. Tell me what's going on." I'm like, "Hey, you know what? If you had listened to me 30 years ago, you would know what's going on." So it takes time, and we're here for the long haul.
Yeah, and I think the other common thread with blockchain and Bitcoin is just cooperative infrastructure. So, what we're looking for is cooperation in the realm of speech and conversations. Blockchain is more in the realm of the actual technology stack that's powering the conversation. It's always counterintuitive, unexpected things and unconventional things that end up being correct in hindsight. And the smartest people right now in the world who are behind Bitcoin, all the leading computer scientists, investors, technologists, everyone knows that censorship is not the answer to solving our problems. I mean, it's actually a powerful minority that think censorship is actually going to work to find common humanity. It's about control. But, you need to let go of control in order to regain control in a weird way. And I think that's what blockchain does. And that's what we're trying to do on Minds by you let go of control by letting people speak, but then, it ends up coming back to you in a productive way.
Well, you get more productivity by letting people do their job rather than micromanaging, essentially.
Yeah, for sure. And Daryl, I saw you on a previous interview talking about the power of music and really how that kind of played a big part in ending or helping to end segregation in this country.
Absolutely.
And I thought that was really profound, a connection I hadn't even thought about. And you have such a unique insight. I don't know if that was a Chuck Berry ringtone on your phone earlier.
Oh, yeah.
But that story of you with Chuck Berry, you said something about how even in the 1950s, black and white people couldn't even sit next to each other.
Well, back in the day, music venues, just like restaurants and whatever else, waiting rooms and bus stations, toilets, bathrooms, etc., were segregated. And music venues, if they allowed black people in at all, they had ropes going around the seats with signs hanging down that would say, seating for white patrons only, colored seating only. So if you and I were to go to a concert together in the 1940s, say to go see Benny Goodman or Glenn Miller or somebody, you and I could not sit together. That was the law. And if we crossed that, we would be arrested. Simple as that. We go to see Frank Sinatra, you go sit over there, I go sit over here. And most people abided by those laws. They were called Jim Crow laws. In the 1950s, those laws were still in place. But two phenomenons happened in the 1950s. One was the invention of a genre of music called rock and roll by black people, namely Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Bo Diddley, and Fats Domino, and some others. It was popularized by the white artists, the late great Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Bill Haley and the Comets, Buddy Holly, Carl Perkins, and others, because black artists could not get airplay on most white radio stations. So in order to sell records, you had to be played on the radio, people could hear it, then they go out and buy the record. All right, so blacks were limited, but that was the first phenomenon, the invention of rock and roll. People got tired, kids especially, got tired of hearing their parents' records like How Much Is That Doggy in the Window? You know, they wanted to hear wop, bop, a loo, bop, a lot, bam, boom, tutti frutti and stuff like that. When these guys came out playing this new music that had a backbeat to it, boom, boom, bop, boom, boom, bop, instead of the swing era, right? They could not sit still. For the first time in our history, black kids and white kids bounced up out of their seats and began knocking over those signs and boogieing and dancing in the aisles together. That had never happened before. So the city fathers, in other words, the white establishment, began banning rock and roll because it was causing race mixing. The police would come in and shut down those shows, not just in the South, but even in the North, because what these kids were doing was illegal. And they began blaming it. They said it was a communist plot. It's the devil's music, on and on and on. Anything to degrade rock and roll. It was called all kinds of names. Jungle music, nigger bop, race music, all this kind of stuff. Then you think about how civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and many other black and white civil rights leaders worked hard, tirelessly, through having boycotts, marches, demonstrations, sit-ins, in order to bring white adults and black adults together. These rock and roll artists, Chuck, Elvis, Jerry Lee, Richard, were achieving that with black and white kids with their music, right? And then they disliked Elvis Presley, the establishment, because he was singing black music. He was dancing around, wiggling his hips like a black person. They kicked him off of TV. The demand was so high, they brought him back, but they only filmed him from the waist up, so they wouldn't see him knocking his knees and swiveling his hips. He was known as Elvis the Pelvis, right? But when they saw how much money could be generated by this, all of a sudden, they changed history. They rewrote history. All of a sudden, Elvis invented rock and roll, and Elvis is the king. But rock and roll is undercredited for what it did for civil rights. It brought black and white youth together. Because if you think about it like this, those kids who went in the 1950s, they did not go to integrated schools. They were in segregated schools, all right? And so there was a high level of racism there. They didn't play with little black kids. They lived in all-white neighborhoods. They went to all-white schools. Now they go to this concert because everybody likes music, black kids, white kids, whatever, right? But they never, in the 1940s, they never got together and danced. In the 1950s, they did. So these kids who were raised that you don't play with those kids on the other side of the track. He's from the other side of the track. That means he's from the black side of the tracks. Okay, these are terms. When someone says he's from the wrong side of the tracks, that's slang for he's from the black side of the tracks. Just like when somebody says it's none of your cotton picking business, it's a slur. That goes back to slavery, because who picked cotton? Slaves. Okay, so now these kids are all of a sudden dancing with people that their parents would be abhorred to see, and they're thinking, it wasn't so bad dancing with that guy. So now when they grow up and they have kids, their kids are a little less racist than they were. And then when their kids grow up and have kids, those kids are a little less racist. And when they grow up, the trend continues, and that trend are the people who put Obama in office. You see? And that started with rock and roll.
Yeah, that's fascinating about how they tried to ban rock and roll. I mean,
and I can show you that.
I am going to today dig into some of those cases, because it's just the same thing. I mean, they're trying to ban Bitcoin and blockchain in certain countries. I mean, even in certain states, there's all sorts of legal challenges. Like, the things that bring people together, for some reason, there's this knee-jerk reaction when a new thing comes out that brings people together to ban it.
Right.
Or it's just an unexpected source of power that, authorities think needs to be
because
tamed.
they didn't control it. They didn't
Right.
invent it. They aren't the ones who put it out there. So it's out of their hands, and they need to get a grip on it. Mm-hmm. And the way to get a grip on it is to ban it.
So where was rock and roll banned initially?
In the North, in the South, even the mayor of how further north can you get than, say, Jersey City, New Jersey? The mayor in Jersey City, New Jersey banned rock and roll concerts from coming to Jersey City because he'd heard about these incidents around the country.
And so then eventually what... Sorry, I'm kind of asking.
No, please. Keep going.
Just take over this rock and roll section. And then what was the tipping point?
You couldn't stop it.
Was it just one at a time? The city started allowing it after they had banned it, or was there...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they had to. They had to. And then more and more disc jockeys. There was one disc jockey named Alan Freed who got in trouble. He got in trouble for payola, which is, paying disc jockeys to play your records. But there were a lot of other ones who were engaged in that also. Dick Clark being one of them. But Dick Clark, now Alan Freed would allow black kids and white kids to dance together at his shows. He was a promoter also of these rock and roll shows. And so they couldn't nail him on that. They nailed him on the payola. Right? Dick Clark was also involved in payola. But on American Bandstand, Dick Clark did not allow blacks and whites to dance together. So they turned a blind eye to his other activities.
I can't help but see a similarity between modern censorship online and, segregating population in the previous years. And I don't know if I'm just making a huge leap here, but do you think that modern censorship online, like censoring people's ideas, is almost like a form of segregation?
I would say it's a form of it, or a form of a suppression.
Yeah, that's probably a better word.
Certainly. And people have been suppressed. But yeah, it's definitely a form of suppression. But what happens? As Bill was saying earlier, you delete something from the internet, it doesn't just go away. It gets stored somewhere or whatever. And, when you suppress somebody's ideas and somebody's freedom of speech, it doesn't go away. In fact, it emboldens it. It makes it stronger because people become more determined to get out whatever it is, they want to say. They have to be heard. And all of us, it festers and it grows like a pressure cooker. And if you don't release that valve on the top, it's going to explode. And this is what, we see happen. People, are having their speeches shut down, which I think is wrong. Now, we have the right to hate, but we don't have the right to hurt. Okay? And when you cross that line, that's when the law steps in. Is there a lot of hateful speech out there? Yes. Right? But there are also ways that we can deal with that, without coming to blows and being violent. There are always going to be sociopaths out there. We know that, who will go to their grave being hateful and on all sides. No one has a monopoly on that kind of thing. But for those who are just frustrated and angry, or they feel suppressed, we have a platform for them that will bring the temperature down.
I mean, it's also interesting how, if you look at the drama that's happened, particularly on Twitter with people like Kanye and Candace Owens, they have been demonized. I certainly don't agree with most of what both of those people say, but because they're friendly to conservatism, they get jumped on. And actually, Candace has made statements that, and I think Kanye has as well, that they feel like there's this sort of new wave of racism being pointed at them for not having, the correct type of political ideology that, minorities are supposed to have. Have you heard much about that, Daryl?
I've been a victim of it.
Right.
Of not having the correct ideology or whatever, or thought process. People are so, today, black and white, and I don't mean that racially. Well, I mean, it could be as well, but I mean, there's no gray area. Either you're for this and against that. There's no, well, let's listen to the other people. No, they're the other people. It's us against them mentality. And I think, a lot of that has come over time and through the media, because a lot of us get our news through sound bites, just little bitty segments, And so now that's how we think. We don't think about discussion. We don't think about long sentences and having a paragraph of communication. It's just a little sound bite. And so now we're repeating it. We've become conditioned to that. So, we take it in and we spit it back out. And we need to revisit this and have these communications. People should be able to think however they want to think. And there is a disconnect, I think, really between a lot of people, especially young people. For example, back in the day, in the way back day, black people were Republican. Most black people were Republicans, right? Because our hero was who? Abraham Lincoln. He freed the slaves. And Lincoln was the head of the Republican Party. He was the face of it, right? Then in the 1960s, racists like Barry Goldwater and others who put down the Civil Rights Act and all this kind of stuff caused us. Now, the Ku Klux Klan and an organization like that came out of the Democrats. All right? They came out of the Democrats. Now, the Democrats shifted and became more liberal, and with Barry Goldwater became way overly conservative. So it shifted. Now you have more black Democrats and more white Republicans. All right? And people always try to point that out. That, the Klan came out of the Democrats, why are you Democrat? Or most Republicans are racist. No, that's not the case. This is why this discussion needs to happen. You can't always rely on what happened in back in the day to be held accountable in the present. And this is where discussion comes in, because there's so many disconnects.
Right. And just to bring it full circle, technology is kind of the theme of this podcast. And if it hadn't been for radio, TV, even recordings, a lot of that music wouldn't have reached the rest of the population. I mean, there was live events, but it's harder to have like a national movement before everything was broadcasted. I kind of see that in a microcosm today with the internet. And we have this huge boom of information and everything all the time, but it almost seems like it's easy to be kind of like corralled into different segments of the internet. You know what I mean? Like, I know Facebook has their algorithms that you're going to see a certain thing, and you pretty much have to know who you want to follow if they get banned, because you can't just, they're not going to pop up in your feed like they used to. Because back in the day, you would turn on the TV, everybody saw the same channels, right. Everybody had the same radio stations. But now the internet is so compartmentalized. I guess, Bill, how is Minds.com different from some of these other platforms in terms of how people see content and are exposed to, new and different things, if that makes any sense at all?
Yeah, I mean, we don't filter the news feed, so you'll always see what you subscribe to. I don't know. I think you sort of have to do what is counterintuitive in order to attract attention in a strange way. If you go too much into the status quo, you'll just get drowned by everyone else thinking that way, and you won't stand out. I mean, it's actually pretty scary to me that that this is controversial. You would think, I think it's becoming less controversial because you can't deny it. There's no empirical evidence that would show that less conversation helps the problem. it's just an emotional response when people try to use that as an argument for shutting down speech or discourse?
Well, one thing that, one of the main principles of Minds is their focus on free speech, okay? Unlike some of the other platforms out there. And for one thing, free speech is something that people on opposite ends of the spectrum do have in common. The extremists, supremacists, whatever you want to call them, they want free speech. They want to be able to say whatever it is, they got to say on their mind. And the people who are opposed to it want to be able to say what they want to say. Okay? So now, that's fine. We advocate that. But what we want to advocate is, we want you to have free speech. We want you to have free speech, but let's agree to do it civilly. So we already found that common ground. Each extreme wants to be able to say what they want to say. Freedom of speech. Fine. This is the platform where you all can do it. All we ask is that we do it civilly. Right? And speaking of technology, here's the thing. We claim to be the greatest country on the face of this earth. I have a little bit of a problem with that statement. Not that I dislike my country. I love my country. However, technologically, yes, we are the greatest country on this earth. We put a man on the moon, and we invented that technology. And while Neil Armstrong was up there walking around talking about one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, we were able to talk to him live all the way from Earth to the moon via satellite radio phone. We invented that technology, all right? Everybody that you know has email, has a cell phone. Hit a few words, hit a few numbers, hit send. You're talking to people right next door, in the next state over, halfway around the world, Australia, Africa, China, wherever. We invented that technology. So how is it that we as Americans can talk to people as far away as the moon or anywhere on the face of this earth, yet we have difficulty talking to the person right next door because he or she is a different color, a different religion, a different sexual persuasion, a different whatever? It seems to me, before we can call ourselves the greatest, our ideology needs to catch up to our technology. And once we have them both up there, then we can truly brag about how great we are. And you want to talk about technology? Yes, we have it. But there are third world countries out here, or what we consider to be third world countries, that have female presidents, female prime ministers, and things like that. And, in the 2008 election, we had a black man running for president, Obama. We had a woman, Hillary Clinton. We had a Mormon, Mitt Romney, and a host of other people. No matter what channel you turned on, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, whatever, all day long, the question was, can a Mormon be president? Can a black man be president? Can a woman be president? Who cares what somebody is? We want to know, can we have a president that can run this country? And you're a lot younger than I am, but long before you were born, when John F. Kennedy was running for president, the big question was, can a Catholic be president? How ridiculous is that? Where is our ideology? Okay? Why are we worried about that when third world countries have surpassed us ideologically? They put women in there, So our ideology needs to catch up to our technology. And I think through discussion on a platform like Minds.com, it just might arrive at that.
Yeah, and like Daryl said about, being civil. So we started this new part of Minds called change.minds.com, which is where we have all the information about the deradicalization initiative and a group for people to start to have these conversations. And I mean, the reality is that there are going to be people who don't want to be civil. And, we're going to do our best to facilitate civil conversation. If people aren't going to be civil, then we're going to need to figure out how exactly we deal with those people who come into the group and don't want to be particularly civil.
Well, what you do is, you have a set of rules to follow, and those rules are posted. Yeah. You break the rules, you can be out of the room.
That's the thing. Exactly. You don't...
and the rules apply to everybody.
Right, yeah. And they can go into their other room and then come back in when they're ready to be civil. Right.
Time out. You get time out.
Yeah.
But it doesn't all have to be about race. I mean, we're talking about race a lot today. But it could be any topic. It could be abortion. It could be global warming, nuclear weapons, the war in the Middle East. You're on one side, somebody's on the other side. Bring it to Minds. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out together. It could be any controversial topic, because this country is becoming more and more diverse by the day. All right, with different people from different walks of life, different countries coming in, and that's not going to stop. It's always been that way, but now technology has surpassed our ideology. And we need to catch up, and this is what's happening. That's why we're seeing a lot of friction. People can't handle it, and so we have to address it. And that's why we have to take non-conventional means to do it. And you can't wait for the government to regulate this kind of stuff. It's not going to happen, or if it does, it's not going to happen as quickly. The government cannot compel how you think. It can only compel how you behave. Because if you behave like you think, and your thinking is not in line with the government's laws, you get arrested. So that's what keeps people, in line. But see, Martin Luther King, it wasn't the government that compelled the buses to change their policy to allow blacks to sit, anywhere in the bus. It was us, the civilians. Martin Luther King was a civilian, and he put together that boycott. And the buses ran around empty, burning up gas and not making any money. So they finally said, okay, fine. We'll let black people sit where they want to sit. And as a result of that, in Montgomery, Alabama, the Montgomery bus lines changed their policy. All the other southern states saw that and said, we better change ours too, because King will be coming here next. And he was right. It was one man's idea to do this boycott. And it affected the entire South, not the government. The government got a little upset with Martin Luther King because he had so much power, because he was a black guy, all right? And this is what Minds and people like Bill Ottman, sitting right here next to me, co-founder, is experiencing, all right? He put together a single idea, that can revolutionize the internet. And people are like, whoa, and they cannot fathom, something like this being put out by a civilian. Maybe they didn't think of it or whatever. But anytime you revolutionize something, you're going to have pushback. But then eventually it becomes commonplace.
And I mean, nonviolent protest was developed in the civil rights era, and it was so successful. And I just am perplexed why the people protesting these, the big protests that you see, are we seeing any nonviolent protests? Most of the protests you see on the news now are riots, vandalism, just...
Now, I can tell you why those things happen. It's not a justifiable excuse, but there's a reason behind that. And no, I don't advocate that. But I can tell you that, a lot of people say, well, why, when a black kid gets shot by a white police officer, or this happens, there's a riot, and black people go around and they burn down these buildings and so forth and so on, and violence and looting and so forth. I'll tell you the reason, right? It's twofold. Part of it is frustration with the judicial system, right? Let's think back to Rodney King for a second. Right out here in Los Angeles. When the Rodney King incident happened, everybody saw it on TV all day long, for days, because of George Halliday's video. They saw the cops beating this guy senseless, right? And black people were ready to go out and start tearing apart LA. But black leaders came out and said, hey, whoa. Let's be calm. Let's let the judicial system run its course. Okay? Let's just hold back. There's the evidence right there. We got it on videotape. Because we've been complaining about this very same thing. There have been thousands of Rodney Kings. I've been a Rodney King. Okay, I've been beat by cops before. Okay, there have been thousands of Rodney Kings, but nobody had it on video. So the attitude was, well, if the cops did that to you, you had to have been doing something wrong. No. Okay, and people just don't believe it. There's the evidence. So don't go out and riot. Let it go through the courts. So what do? We sat back. Nobody rioted that night. It was amazing. Nobody rioted. Even after seeing that video, they waited months for the court trial. It was moved to Simi Valley, put before an all-white jury that acquitted all 4 cops. That's when the riot started. That was the frustration. Like, okay, we've been waiting. Finally we think after all these years, we're finally going to be vindicated. There's the evidence. And what do? Same old stuff we've been having for 400 years. We're to blame. All right? And they went out and started burning down Los Angeles. All right? Out of frustration. The second reason is this. Because if you can't get justice in the courts, there's nowhere you can get it. So when you run a red light, when you get pulled over for speeding, when you throw trash out the window and a cop nails you, what does he do? He gives you a ticket, right? What's he trying to do? He's trying to teach you a lesson by hurting you where it hurts, in your wallet, by taking your money. So when people go around and burn down the city and destroy these buildings, that's how they're hurting you, because they know it's going to cost millions of dollars from the city to replace those buildings. So if we can't get justice there, then we're going to cost them some money by hitting them in the pocketbook. That's all they can do. I'm not justifying it. I'm just giving you the reason why those things happen.
What ultimately, what happened next after that? So what happened next? So the riots happened, and then what happened next?
Well, what happened next was, unfortunately, 4 black guys grabbed an innocent white truck driver named Reginald Denny, who was doing his delivery route or whatever. He had nothing to do with anything. They grabbed him, yanked him out of the truck, and beat the daylights out of him, the same way these 4 white cops had beaten Rodney King. Reginald Denny did not deserve what he got. And now you had 4 white cops who were acquitted for doing exactly what those 4 black kids did to Reginald Denny. Hit him in the head with a cinder block. It was all caught on helicopter news footage. Everybody wanted to see what would happen if those 4 black kids were going to get the same justice that the 4 white cops got for beating up Rodney King. And they sat back and they waited. And the 4 black kids were acquitted.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now, they were guilty as those white cops were, but they were acquitted because the judicial system...
They knew what would happen.
They knew we would not be sitting here today. I guarantee you, Los Angeles would be a forgotten town. Seriously. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's an extreme example of when 2 wrongs make a right.
Right. I mean, because both of those decisions were actually wrong.
Exactly.
Both should have been
absolutely
punished, because you don't assault people.
Exactly.
But that was sort of the judicial
poetic
system.
justice.
Yeah. And I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I think that there's gravity towards these ideas. People, I mean, look at the most viral content on the internet. It's all about, when there's police brutality, it blows up, and there's such a magnifying glass on everything now. I mean, it's hard to. Do you actually think that the problem of racism is, because I've read in multiple books, actually, in like Steven Pinker's, for example, that like poverty, racism, war, violence is all actually, in the grand scheme of things, shrinking drastically. But now that there's so much attention, especially through social media, on all of these things, I mean, it's obviously still a huge problem, because and it's more polarizing and impactful because the technology can amplify it so much. But I mean, do you actually think that more of the country is racist than back in the post-civil rights? I mean, I feel like far less.
There are less racists today. The number of racists have gone down, but there are more racist incidents. The number of incidents have gone up. Again, there was an increase in racism after Obama was elected because people became unhinged. They thought, we fell asleep on the job. Now we let one of them into the White House. So they started acting out. People started acting out after Trump, made a lot of his statements. Okay, neither one of those presidents invented racism, and neither one of them should be blamed for racism. All right, but people are becoming more and more emboldened. The racists have always been here. Yes, a few more may be getting recruited, but the ones who are already here are now committing more of those acts because they feel emboldened and they're getting closer and closer to that shift. This country was built on a two-tier society. White supremacy at the top, slavery at the bottom. Slavery never moved up to the level of white supremacy and then they progressed together. It always moved up in two tiers. So that's the problem. But and when you're in the throne of power, you don't want to give that seat up. All right. But now it's being minimized by the influx of people who do not look like the majority of people here, which is one of the reasons a certain president said, we need more people here from Norway. How does that make me feel? And he called certain countries shitholes. This is something that resonates with people who look like me. So it also resonates with the people who are doing these racist incidents. That spurs them on because they feel like, well, he's right, and we need to stop this. And if my group can't stop it, I'm going to stop it myself. We're going to have these Unite the Right rallies. We're going to go up there and take people out of El Paso, Texas, because they've crossed over the border. And even Americans, bona fide Americans who are non-white, are feeling that like I just saw an article on CNN.com about I think it was a Hispanic American who fought for our country, et cetera, who had acid thrown in his face and told to go back to where he came from. I mean, he was born here, So, and when people say illegal immigration, it's a code word. It's a code word for people from South America and Mexico and West Africa, because they don't care about people who are here illegally from Canada or the UK or Eastern Europe, because those people look like the majority of Americans. And so if I was white and my kid was to marry somebody from Canada or the UK, their offspring would be white. But if my daughter or son marries somebody from Guatemala or El Salvador or Mexico or Nigeria, that's the browning of America. That's white genocide. And globally, white people are a minority. Domestically, white people are the majority. But they're seeing that 2042 come when they know in 23 years from now, they're going to be 50-50, and the next generation or two, they're going to be the minority for the first time in the history of this country. There are plenty of white people who embrace that. Say, hey, it's evolution, this is great, blah, blah, blah. But there are plenty who don't, and they're becoming unhinged. And this is where a lot of that hate is coming from. Even if Trump never made president, even if Obama never made president, that 2042 shift is still going to happen and still going to bring out that element of people. And this is why we have to learn to talk with each other now and expect that. It's going to be like Y2K. This will be the next Y2K.
It's funny. It makes me think of, what does it make you think of in Bitcoin? What's the happening?
Yeah.
They call it, basically, the way that Bitcoin works is all the computers, they mine Bitcoin. So there will only ever be 21 million. And it's projected, when is it, 2024? I forget, when all the Bitcoin will actually be created. So it's sort of like this point in the future that people look towards. It's going to take a lot of education between now and 2042 to basically explain to those people that, you know, there is a world in 2042 where everyone stays put.
Right.
And
you're right.
And we just, there's a way to make it work. That's the
our
information
job.
Needs to get conveyed. Yeah.
And that is our job.
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you.
This has been a really good conversation, and I just want to give you both the opportunity for closing thoughts and where people can go to learn more about you and how to follow you on Minds.
Well, minds.com/Daryl Davis. Also, daryldavis.com.
Yeah, minds.com/Ottman, and definitely check out change.minds.com again. And, you know, I always like to pound into the idea that you vote with your energy, with your attention. That's what I love about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Actually, there's been great arguments that Bitcoin and crypto can help equalize wealth inequality, because if a lot of minorities and lower class people get involved in Bitcoin, I mean, it is a juggernaut on the up curve that's going to, you know, a lot of us think it's going to be competitive with the fiat financial system. So it's a great way to pull people into equality, and it's a cooperative movement where you use it, it grows. It's the same as we're doing at Minds. You use it, it grows, you participate, it grows. It just creates a snowball effect. So, I mean, there's plenty of people who agree with these ideas, and we just have to bring them together.
It's great. Minds.com, everybody. Bill and Daryl, thanks again.
Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.
And enjoy the rest of your time in LA.
Thank you.